I came to that house to take what the paper said was mine. I told myself I was only doing my job, and that mercy was a luxury I couldn't afford. Clay Rourke rode into the valley at first light with a folded debt sealed in red wax, expecting silence and surrender. Instead, he found a widow holding a fevered child, 4 others standing too straight for their ages, and a kitchen that had learned how to stretch nothing into one more morning. By sundown, the law would circle the place. By midnight, gunfire would test the doors. By morning, a man with everything to lose would have to choose between keeping his land or keeping his name. He could have ridden away. He should have. But once he stepped inside, the numbers stopped adding up, and the town began telling a story that didn't fit the ledger. The future would demand a confession, a torn seal, and a promise written without witnesses, because the debt wasn't the first thing that was altered. The date on the receipt was. Stay with this story to the very end. Subscribe for more Western love tales. And tell me, what city are you watching from? The paper did not tremble in Clay Rourke's hand. That was how folks in the valley knew he was serious. The note was folded clean into thirds, the red wax seal still whole, pressed with a mark that meant land, law, and endings. Clay did not read it again. He never did. He knew the numbers by memory, knew the dates, knew the sound doors made when men like him knocked on them. He stopped his horse outside the Boone place just long enough to take in the silence. No smoke from the chimney, no dog. No sound, but a child coughing somewhere inside. Clay dismounted, boots firm in the dirt, and rapped once on the door. Not loud, not polite. Just enough. The door opened a hand's width. A woman stood there, thin from winter and effort, her dark hair pulled back tight as if she couldn't spare a strand. She did not ask his name. She looked first at the horse, then at the paper in his hand, and only then at his face. "You're early," she said. "On time," Clay replied. "Mrs. Boone." She opened the door the rest of the way. The room behind her was small and clean in the way poverty demands. No clutter, no comfort. A table with 3 legs braced by a crate. A stove gone cold. 5 children arranged by instinct rather than order. 2 on the floor, 1 at the table, 1 near the wall, and the smallest in her arms, burning with fever. Clay stepped inside and removed his hat. "I've come to collect what's owed," he said. The woman nodded once. "I know." She shifted the child on her hip. The girl could not have been more than 2, her breath shallow, her cheek too hot for winter. The woman did not ask for help. She did not apologize. She did not beg. Clay placed the folded paper on the table and set 2 fingers on the seal. "The note was due last month," he said. "The bank allowed 30 days. That time's gone." A boy of about 10 rose from the floor like a wire pulled tight. "You can't take our house, Pitsum," the boy said. Clay looked at him. "Sit down." The boy didn't. The woman laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Luke." The boy sat, jaw clenched. Another child, older, a girl with eyes too sharp for 12, stood between Clay and the table. "My mother keeps the books," she said. "We don't owe what that says." Clay studied her. "You're the eldest." She didn't answer, but she didn't step aside either. Clay moved around her carefully, unfolded the paper, and read the amount aloud anyway. not because he needed to, but because truth spoken had weight. When he finished, the woman finally spoke again. "My husband signed for seed and tools," she said. "He died before harvest. I've been paying since." Clay looked up. "You haven't paid enough." "I've paid everything I had." "That doesn't change the number." She nodded as if she had expected no other answer. "What happens now?" she asked. Clay folded the paper once more. "If the debt isn't settled by morning, the property reverts to the bank." One of the smaller children began to cry. The woman tightened her hold on the feverish child. "And then?" "Then the sheriff comes." The eldest girl swallowed hard. "Where do we go?" Clay did not answer right away. He had come to this place to do a thing he had done 100 times. He had told himself it would be no different. But something in the room refused to stay quiet. The coughing child stirred, letting out a thin sound that cut through the space between them. Clay turned to the woman. "The child's sick." "She's been worse," the woman said. "She's been better." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Clay reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather pouch. He set it on the table without looking at the children. "Medicine's in there," he said, "for the fever." The woman stared at it, then at him. "I didn't ask." "I know." "Is that charity?" Clay's jaw tightened. "No. Consider it a delay." She did not touch the pouch. The eldest girl stepped forward and slid it away from the paper, placing it closer to the stove. Her eyes never left Clay's. "Thank you," the girl said carefully, like a word learned too early. Clay replaced his hat. "I'll return at dawn," he said, "with an answer." The woman met his gaze. "We'll be here." Outside, the wind cut sharper than it had an hour earlier. Clay mounted his horse and rode halfway down the track before he stopped. Something small pressed against his palm. He opened his hand. A piece of bread, hard, cracked, no larger than his thumb. He turned. The smallest boy, 5 at most, stood at the door, barefoot despite the cold. "You dropped this," the boy said. Clay closed his fingers around the bread. "I didn't," he said. The boy nodded anyway, satisfied, and went back inside. Clay stayed there longer than he meant to. He rode on at last, but the weight in his coat was heavier than paper, heavier than land. By the time he reached the bend in the road, another rider joined him. Silas Kellen smiled without warmth. "You're late," Silas said. "I wasn't finished." Silas glanced back toward the Boone place. 5 kids, I hear." Clay said nothing. Silas shrugged. "Tragic. Still, business is business. Sheriff's ready." Clay looked ahead. "Morning." Silas's smile thinned. "Make sure you don't forget which side you're on." Clay did not answer. But when he rode away, the folded paper in his coat felt different. Not lighter. Sharper. Clay Rourke did not sleep that night. He told himself it was the wind that kept him awake, or the horse shifting in the corral, or the way the house always settled wrong after midnight. But when dawn came thin and gray, he was already dressed, already holding the folded paper like it might change if he stared hard enough. He rode back to the Boone place before the valley woke. The door was unlatched this time. He knocked once anyway. The eldest girl opened it. Nora, he remembered. She looked him over as if counting costs. "You came early again," she said. "So did the sun." She stepped aside without asking her mother. Inside, the woman, Eliza, stood at the stove, stirring water that pretended to be broth. She did not turn when Clay entered. "You said dawn," she said. "It is." She nodded. "Then you'll want to sit." Clay remained standing. The children gathered by habit. Luke leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Daisy perched on the bench, feet swinging but not touching. Ben hovered near the door. The smallest, May, lay wrapped on the bed, her breathing shallow but steady. Eliza lifted a pot and poured the thin broth into 5 bowls. She set them on the table, one by one, careful to keep the portions equal. There was no 6th bowl, Clay noticed. Eliza noticed him noticing. She placed a single spoon beside the first bowl and pushed it toward Nora. "You start." Nora hesitated, then took a sip. Luke followed. Daisy waited until Ben had his share. No one spoke. Clay stood there longer than he should have. Finally, Eliza turned. "You came for an answer," she said. "I did." She wiped her hands on her skirt. "Then here it is. I can work. For you, for the ranch. I'll pay what I owe with labor." Clay shook his head once. "The bank doesn't take labor." "I'm not talking to the bank." "I am." Her jaw tightened. "Then you can take the house." Luke stepped forward. "You can't." Eliza lifted a hand. Luke stopped. Clay reached into his coat and placed the paper on the table again. "I can delay 72 hours, he said, "if you sign acknowledgement." Eliza did not look at the paper. "What does it say?" she asked. "That you accept the debt as written. That my children inherit it." Clay said nothing. She met his eyes. "I won't put my name on something that follows them longer than I can protect them." Silence pressed down on the room. From the bed, May coughed. Soft, but wrong. Clay looked at the child. "She needs rest." "She needs time," Eliza said. "So do we all." Clay folded the paper back into thirds. "I'll return tomorrow," he said. Nora spoke before he reached the door. "Why'd you bring medicine yesterday?" she asked. Clay paused. "Because it was there." "That's not an answer." He turned back. "Because I could." Nora nodded once as if filing the information away. Outside, Clay mounted up and rode only a short distance before stopping again. He turned the horse and went back. This time, Marta Soto was there, standing near the fence with a sack of flour balanced on her hip. "You picked a bad morning," Marta said. Clay dismounted. "Did I?" Marta snorted. "Every morning's bad when Silas Kellen's counting coins." She glanced toward the house. "They eat yet?" Clay hesitated. "Barely." Marta shook her head. "Yesterday, Eliza gave the last of her bread to the man Silas sent before you." Clay stiffened. "The bank sent someone else?" "Not the bank," Marta said. "Silas. He likes to look first." Clay said nothing. "She didn't ask him for mercy," Marta went on. "She fed him anyway. Said a man who comes hungry leaves meaner." Marta adjusted the sack. "Funny thing, he took the bread and still marked the door." Clay stared at the house. Inside, Nora scraped the bottom of her bowl with care. Clay reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small pouch. Flour, beans, Enough for a week, maybe 2. He carried it to the door. Eliza opened it before he knocked. "I told you I wasn't signing," she said. "I'm not asking you to." He set the pouch on the floor. "I'll pay for these, Zhao," she said immediately. "You can," Clay replied. "Later." She shook her head. "I don't take charity." "Neither do I." Their eyes locked. "I'm buying time," he said. "That's all." She stepped back. Nora picked up the pouch and carried it to the shelf without a word. Clay turned to leave. Behind him, Daisy's small voice broke the quiet. "Did you know our papa used to sing?" Clay stopped. "He sang when the storms came," Daisy said, "so we wouldn't hear the roof." Clay looked down at her. "Did it work?" She nodded. "Most times." Clay left without another word. He rode straight into Silas Kellen halfway down the road. Silas smiled like he always did when he thought he was winning. "You're getting soft," Silas said. "I'm getting thorough." Silas laughed. "You think I don't know about the flour?" Clay met his gaze. "You think feeding children weakens my claim?" "No," Silas said. "It weakens your spine." Clay leaned closer in the saddle. "I'll have an answer tomorrow." Silas's smile thinned. "You already do. You just don't like it." They rode apart. By evening, the sheriff came. Wade Crowley dismounted slow, hands loose, badge catching the light. "Eliza Boone," he called. She stepped out with May in her arms. Sheriff Crowley looked at the child. "She sick?" "Yes." The sheriff nodded, then looked to Clay. "Paper says morning." Clay said, "Paper says tomorrow." The sheriff shrugged. "Paper says what the bank says." Clay stepped forward. "Then you can tell the bank I'll stand for the delay." The sheriff studied him. "That'll cost you." Clay held his gaze. "Everything costs something." The sheriff tipped his hat to Eliza. "Tomorrow, ma'am." When he left, the house felt smaller. Eliza set May down and turned on Clay. "You don't belong here," she said quietly. "I know." "You don't owe us." "I know." "Then why?" Clay answered before he could stop himself. "Because I've seen what happens when men hide behind paper." Eliza searched his face, looking for the lie. She didn't find one. "Tomorrow," she said, "you take what you came for." Clay nodded. He did not tell her that somewhere between the bread and the fever, the paper in his coat had begun to feel like a blade, and that blades cut both ways. The sheriff came back before noon. He did not bring men. He did not bring chains. He brought a measuring tape and a ledger tucked under his arm, which was worse. Clay Rourke was already there, leaning against the fence as if the land still belonged to him. The Boone children watched from the doorway, quiet now, like animals that had learned which sounds meant danger. Wade Crowley swung down from his horse and nodded once. "Clay." "Wade." The sheriff glanced at the house. "Mind if I take a look?" Eliza stepped forward before Clay could speak. "You already have," she said, "every winter since my husband died." The sheriff's mouth twitched. "Procedure." He stepped inside, slow and careful, counting under his breath. Walls, windows, roofline. He made marks in the ledger like a man tallying losses that weren't his. Clay followed. "Tomorrow's still the date," the sheriff said, not looking up. Clay replied evenly, "I told you there's a delay." You told me, Wade said. The bank didn't. Luke shifted by the wall, fists tight. The sheriff noticed. Son, you keep your hands down. Clay moved between them without raising his voice. He's a child. So were we, Wade replied. Didn't save us. From the bed, May coughed again. This time it lingered, rattling in her chest. Wade looked over. She been seen? Eliza stiffened. We're handling it. Clay turned toward the door. I'll fetch Doc Kent. Eliza caught his sleeve. Don't. Clay looked at her. She needs a doctor. She needs warmth and quiet, Eliza said. We can't afford... Clay didn't wait for the rest. He was already outside, swinging into the saddle. Doc Miriam Kent lived on the edge of town, where the roads thinned and people stopped asking questions. She did not smile when Clay arrived. What happened? She asked, already reaching for her bag. Child's burning up, Clay said. Boone Place. She mounted without another word. By the time they returned, the sheriff had finished measuring. Doc Kent knelt beside the bed, unwrapped the child with practiced hands, and pressed her fingers to May's chest. How long? She asked. Since yesterday, Eliza said. Maybe before. Doc's jaw set. She needs medicine, and heat, and rest that isn't broken by fear. Eliza swallowed. Can you? I can help, Doc said. I can't do it for free. Clay stepped forward. Put it on me. Eliza turned. No. Doc looked between them. I don't care where the money comes from. Clay met Eliza's eyes. I'm not buying favor. You're buying silence, Eliza said. From the bank, from the sheriff, from yourself. Clay didn't flinch. I'm buying time. Doc pulled a vial from her bag. This buys hours, not days. She administered the medicine, then stood. If she worsens, Doc said, you ride hard, night or not. Clay nodded. Outside, Silas Kellen waited, hat tipped low, smile already in place. Doctoring now? Silas asked. You're thorough. Clay stepped past him. Get off my land. Silas laughed softly. Careful. That land's closer to mine by the hour. Silas's eyes flicked toward the house. You think a fever changes contracts? No, Clay said. I think it reveals them. Silas leaned in. Tomorrow, Clay, I'll bring witnesses. That night, the Boone house did not sleep. May's fever dipped, then climbed again. Eliza sat by the bed, counting breaths. Nora kept the others quiet with looks alone. Clay remained outside, pacing near the fence, the folded paper burning a hole in his coat. Just before dawn, the fever spiked. Doc Kent was called again. She shook her head this time. She won't last the day without stronger medicine, Doc said. I don't keep it here. Where? Clay asked. 2 hours north, Doc replied. If the roads hold. Clay did not hesitate. I'll ride, he said. Eliza stood. I'm coming. No, Clay said. You stay with the others. Eliza stepped closer, voice low and steady. She's my child. Clay met her gaze. Then trust me with her life. The room went still. Finally, Eliza nodded. Clay wrapped May in his coat and lifted her gently, the way he'd once done with something smaller and heavier than memory allowed him to name. Luke watched from the doorway. "Bring her back," he said. Clay's voice was rough. "I will." The ride was hard and fast. Clay pushed the horse beyond comfort, beyond caution. The child's breath fluttered against his chest like a bird trying to escape. He reached Doc's supplier just after sunrise and turned back without stopping. When he returned, the sheriff was there again. So was Silas. They stood together this time. Clay dismounted, handing May to Eliza, who pressed her cheek to the child's hair. Doc administered the medicine. Slowly, the breathing eased. Silas clapped once, sharp. "Very moving." The sheriff cleared his throat. "Clay, you left the property." "I saved a life," Clay said. Silas smiled. "You also left your holdings unsecured." The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Paperwork was filed. Clay stared at them. "You moved early." Silas shrugged. "Law doesn't sleep." Eliza stepped forward. "You said tomorrow." Silas looked at her like she was something misplaced. Tomorrow came early. Clay felt something settle in his chest, heavy and cold. He turned to Eliza. "I won't pretend this gets easier," he said, "but I won't step aside." Eliza studied him, eyes red but clear. "Then you'll lose," she said. Clay nodded. "Maybe." From the bed, May breathed evenly for the first time. Clay looked at the child, then at the paper, and understood, at last, that the debt he had come to collect was no longer the one written in ink. The house smelled of medicine and burned water. It was the smell of staying alive. May slept at last, her chest rising in small, steady lifts. Eliza did not move from the bedside. She sat with her hands folded, as if motion alone might undo the work of the night. Clay stood near the table, the folded paper resting where it had no right to be, among bowls and spoons, inside a room that still belonged to people. Silas Kellen lingered at the door. "You've made your point," Silas said. "Heroics play well. They don't pay debts." Clay did not turn. "Get out." Silas's smile tightened. "Tomorrow, Clay." "There won't be a tomorrow like you think," Clay replied. Silas laughed once and left. The sheriff followed, slower. He paused by the threshold. "I didn't want it to go like this," Wade Crowley said. "You didn't stop it," Clay answered. Wade sighed. "Law's a wheel. Once it turns, someone gets crushed," Clay finished. "I know." Wade tipped his hat to Eliza without meeting her eyes and stepped away. When they were gone, the house felt quieter than it should have. Eliza finally looked up at Clay. "They'll take it all," she said. "Not afraid. Certain." Clay nodded. "They'll try." She studied him. "Why are you still here?" Clay did not answer at once. He took the paper, unfolded it carefully, and placed it flat on the table. "Because something doesn't add up," he said. Eliza's mouth tightened. "It never did." Clay pointed to the seal. "This was pressed after the ink dried." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means someone wanted the mark more than the truth." Eliza's gaze drifted to the bed, then back. "My husband signed a note like that," she said, "the night before he died." Clay looked at her. "Tell me." She took a breath. "They came at dusk. Said the harvest wouldn't cover what he owed. Said there was another way." Clay kept his voice steady. Who? Elijah Kellen's man, not Silas himself and Pastor Pike. Clay's eyes lifted. The pastor witnessed the signing? Eliza nodded. He prayed first, then told my husband to write his name where God could see it. Clay closed his eyes for a moment. He opened them and asked, "Did your husband know the amount?" Eliza shook her head. He asked. They said it was the same. And after? He rode out before dawn, Eliza said. Said he'd settle it himself. He didn't come back. Silence held. Clay folded the paper again, slower this time. I want to see the ledger. Eliza hesitated. Then she nodded toward Nora. Nora crossed the room and pulled a thin book from beneath a loose board. Its pages were worn, corners soft from use. This is Mama's, Nora said. I help. Clay took the ledger and read. The numbers were neat, careful, honest in a way the bank's books never were. He compared dates, amounts, marks. There it was. A jump that had no reason. A doubling that wore a clean face. Clay's jaw hardened. He closed the ledger. This debt was altered. Eliza exhaled as if she had been holding her breath for years. I knew. Clay looked at her. Why didn't you say? Because saying doesn't stop men like them, she replied. It just teaches them where to press harder. Clay nodded. It teaches me too. That afternoon, he rode to Marta Soto's store. She watched him from behind the counter, already reaching for the drawer she kept for truths that cost something. You find what you were looking for? Marta asked. I found what was hidden, Clay replied. She slid a bundle across the wood. Copies, old ones, before Silas took over the books. Clay sifted through them, his expression darkening. Marta leaned closer. You go after this, Clay. You won't just be fixing her debt. I know. You'll be breaking a spine the town leans on. Clay met her gaze. Then it's time the town learned to stand. On his way back, Clay stopped at the church. Pastor Asa Pike stood at the pulpit, alone, hands folded as if waiting for forgiveness to arrive early. Clay, the pastor said warmly, you look troubled. I'm looking for truth, Clay replied. The pastor smiled. Truth is a path walked with faith. Clay placed the ledger on the front pew. Then walk me through this. Pastor Pike glanced down. His smile did not reach his eyes. Accounts are not my calling. Witness is, Clay said. You witnessed a signature. The pastor stiffened. I prayed over a grieving man. You watched him sign a number he didn't know. The pastor's voice cooled. Careful. Clay leaned in. You used God to weigh a hand. The pastor's lips pressed thin. If you think to shame me, I think to stop you, Clay said, and anyone who hides behind you. He left without waiting for a blessing. By evening, word had spread. Looks followed Clay through town. Doors closed a shade quicker. Whispers grew teeth. When he returned to the Boone place, Eliza met him outside. They came, she said. Who? Men with questions. Kind ones. Sharp ones. Clay nodded. I expected that. She searched his face. This will ruin you. Maybe, Clay said, but it will end them. She shook her head. It won't. Men like that don't end. They circle. Clay looked past her, at the house, at the children moving quietly within. Then I'll stand where they can't turn. That night, a stone hit the fence, then another. Clay stepped into the dark. A voice called from beyond the trees. You don't belong here anymore, Rourke. Clay answered evenly. Neither does your lie. A shot cracked the night. Not close enough to kill, close enough to warn. Clay did not return fire. He stood there until the silence came back. When he went inside, Eliza was waiting. They won't stop, she said. Clay nodded. Then neither will I. He placed the ledger beside the folded paper on the table. 2 truths. 1 seal. Outside, the town settled into uneasy sleep. Inside, Clay Rourke made a decision he would not be able to undo. They left before sunrise. No wagon, no neighbors, just what could be carried without breaking children. Clay rode ahead. Eliza followed on the mare he'd saddled low, May wrapped tight against her chest. The others walked when they could, rode when they tired. Nora kept count without being asked. Luke kept watch without pretending not to be afraid. The ranch house stood larger than anything the children had known. Not grand, just solid. Doors that closed straight. A roof that didn't argue with weather. Clay dismounted and opened the door himself. This is temporary, he said, before anyone could speak. You stay. You don't owe me anything. You don't cross the line that keeps this decent. Eliza met his gaze. What line? My room's off limits, Clay said. So is your debt. I'm not your keeper. She nodded. And my children? They're children, Clay replied. They don't need rules. They need sleep. Inside, the house rearranged itself around them. Not by furniture, by habit. Nora set the younger ones near the hearth. Daisy traced the edge of the table like it might disappear. Ben hovered close to Clay, watching how a man moved when he wasn't being watched. Luke took the far corner, back to the wall. Eliza did not sit. She went straight to work. She swept. She wiped. She folded what little they had and put it away like it mattered. Clay watched her claim dignity by effort and said nothing. At midday, a rider appeared at the fence, then another. By evening, whispers had found the porch. Marta Soto came first, bread tucked under her arm. I won't stay, she said. Just thought you'd eat. Eliza took the bread. Thank you. Marta glanced at Clay. Town's restless. Clay nodded. They don't like mirrors. Marta smiled thinly and left. Pastor Asa Pike arrived before supper. He did not dismount. Eliza Boone, he called. This is not a place for you. Eliza stepped out, hands empty. It's a roof. It's temptation, the pastor replied. And scandal. Clay joined her. If you have business, say it to me. Pastor Pike looked him over. You're confusing mercy with pride. Clay answered evenly. I'm confusing nothing. The pastor's eyes flicked to the children watching from the doorway. Think of them. I am, Eliza said, every minute. The pastor tipped his hat without blessing and rode away. That night, Clay cooked. Not well, but enough. He placed the plates down and stepped back. Eat, he said. We'll talk after. They did. Eliza spoke first. This can't last. No, Clay agreed. You'll be ruined. Maybe. She looked at him, steady. I won't be your reason. Clay met her gaze. You're not. Silence settled. Not awkward. Measured. A stone struck the fence, then another. Luke was on his feet before Clay could move. "Stay," Clay said. One word. "Firm." Clay stepped outside. Thompson. Dark held its breath. A voice called, "You think you can buy decency, Rourke?" Clay answered, "I think I can choose it." A bottle shattered near the trough. Laughter followed, thin and sharp. Clay did not return inside until the night quieted. When he did, Eliza was waiting. "They'll come again," she said. Clay nodded. "Tomorrow, they'll come with paper." Morning proved him right. Sheriff Wade Crowley rode in with 2 deputies. Silas Kellen followed at a distance, smiling like a man who enjoyed process. Wade dismounted. "Clay, I'm here to post notice." Clay stepped forward. "On my land?" "On the Boone debt," Wade said. "Temporary residence doesn't change claim." Eliza stood beside Clay. "I won't be moved like furniture." Wade looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am," Clay cut in. "Give me 24 hours. Silas laughed from the saddle. "You've had plenty." Clay turned. "You've had too many." Silas's smile vanished. "Post it." Wade hesitated. Just a beat. Then he nailed the notice to the porch post. The sound rang louder than it should have. That afternoon, the town came closer. Children were pointed at. Names were said aloud. Truth bent to fit convenience. Eliza kept the younger ones inside. Nora wrote in her ledger until the pencil dulled. Luke paced. Daisy sang under her breath when the noise rose. Ben sat beside Clay on the steps, close enough to feel steadiness. At dusk, Doc Miriam Kent arrived. "She's holding," Doc said of May. "For now." Eliza nodded. "Thank you." Doc looked at Clay. "They won't stop with words." "I know." Doc lowered her voice. "You can still step aside." Clay watched the children through the window. "I won't." Night fell. The ranch lights stayed on. When the shot came, it was aimed high. A warning. Clean. Clay stood in the doorway, unarmed. "Enough," he called into the dark. The answer was silence. Inside, Eliza's voice was calm. "They're trying to make you choose." Clay turned back. They already did. He took the folded paper from his coat and set it on the table beside Nora's ledger. One false truth, one honest account. Eliza looked at the two, then at him. "If you stay," she said, "you lose." Clay nodded. "Then I'll lose standing." He looked at the children. 5 small reasons the night could not win. "Tomorrow," he said, "we stop waiting." The fever came back hard after midnight. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady enough to be wrong. Doc Kent was already there when Eliza felt the heat climb again. She pressed her palm to May's chest and knew, without needing words, that the night had turned against them. Doc looked once and closed her bag. "This isn't holding anymore," she said. "She needs stronger medicine. Now." Eliza's voice stayed even. "Where?" "North," Doc replied. 2 hours if the road doesn't break you. Less if it does. Clay was at the door before the sentence finished. "I'll ride." Eliza shook her head. "It's dark." Clay met her eyes. "So is losing her." Doc added, "If you wait for morning, you won't make it." Clay turned to fetch his coat. Eliza caught his arm. "I'm coming." No, Clay said. You stay with the others. She's my child, and she'll stay alive because I move faster alone. The room held its breath. Nora stepped forward. Mama, she said quietly. Let him. Eliza searched her daughter's face, then Clay's. You bring her back, Eliza said. It wasn't a plea. It was a command that came from a place deeper than fear. Clay nodded once. He wrapped May in his coat, tight but gentle, and carried her out into the dark. The horse sensed urgency and did not resist. Clay mounted and turned north without looking back. Behind him, the ranch lights stayed on. The ride tore at him. The road was wrong in places, ruts hidden, stones that reached for hooves. Clay leaned low, keeping the child close, counting breaths the way he'd once counted heartbeats he couldn't save. Stay, he murmured, not sure who he was talking to. The supplier's door opened on the third knock. Clay did not dismount. Medicine. Now. The man looked at the child and said nothing. He handed over the vial. Clay turned back immediately. When he reached the ranch, the yard was full. Sheriff Wade Crowley stood by the fence with 2 deputies. Silas Kellen waited near the porch, coat neat, smile ready. Clay dismounted, handing May to Doc Kent without a word. Doc administered the medicine. Slowly, too slowly, May's breathing eased. Eliza sagged where she stood, relief breaking through her discipline just enough to show the cost. Silas clapped once, sharp. Touching, he said. But you left your holdings unsecured. Clay turned on him. You moved early. Silas shrugged. The law doesn't wait on sentiment. The sheriff cleared his throat. Clay, notices were posted. Clay looked at Wade. You said morning. Wade did not meet his eyes. Morning came. Eliza stepped forward. You took advantage of a sick child. Silas smiled at her. Children don't change contracts. Clay felt something go cold and clear inside him. He took the folded paper from his coat and held it out. You want this? He asked Silas. Take it. Silas's smile widened. Gladly. Clay did not let go. But you'll take it with the truth, Clay said. And the truth is, this debt was altered. The yard went still. Silas laughed. Prove it. Clay turned to Wade. Ask for the original ledger. Wade hesitated. Ask, Clay repeated. Wade looked at Silas. Silas's smile thinned. That's not procedure, Silas said. Clay's voice was level. Neither is posting notices while I'm saving a child's life. Wade swallowed. I'll look into it. Silas scoffed. You'll do your job. Clay stepped closer to Silas. I am. For a moment it seemed like Silas might order something done. Then he smiled again. Tomorrow, he said. We'll settle this properly. He mounted and rode off. The deputies followed. Wade lingered last. You're standing in front of a wheel, Wade said quietly. It will crush you. Clay answered, Then it'll have to go through me first. When the yard cleared, the night rushed back in. Inside, Eliza held May and did not let go. Nora closed the shutters. Luke sat on the floor, shaking without knowing why. Daisy sang under her breath. Ben leaned against Clay's leg, trusting weight more than words. Doc Kent washed her hands. She'll live, she said, if nothing else goes wrong. Eliza let out a breath she'd been saving. Clay sat at the table and laid out what he had gathered: copies, numbers, marks. Eliza looked at them. "You're going to war." Clay nodded. "I already am." She met his eyes. "This will cost you your ranch." "Maybe." "And if you lose?" Clay looked at the children. "Then I lose knowing I didn't leave them to men who hide behind paper." Eliza was quiet a long time. At last she said, "I won't let you carry this alone." Clay shook his head. "I won't let you carry it at all." Outside, a horse moved in the dark. Then another. The town was not done with them. Clay folded the paper once more and set it beside Nora's ledger. One debt written by men. One truth written by hunger and breath. He looked up as dawn began to thin the dark. "Tomorrow," he said, "we stop running." Clay Rourke rode into town at first light with the kind of calm that made men nervous. He did not bring a posse. He did not bring a gun out in his hand. He brought paper, 2 stacks of it, one stamped and official, the other worn and honest. He brought a name he could no longer ignore. And he brought the memory of a child's fever breathing against his chest in the dark. Marta Soto was already opening her store when he arrived. She took one look at him and set the latch back on the door. "Not today," she said, meaning the town. "Today," Clay replied, meaning the truth. Marta's eyes moved to the papers under his arm. "You sure you want to do this in daylight?" Clay set the bundle on her counter. "If I do it in the dark, they'll call it a lie." Marta ran her finger along a line of numbers and whistled low. "That's a clean jump." "It's not clean," Clay said. "It's covered." Marta looked up. "Covered by who?" Clay's jaw tightened. "That's what I'm here to find out." Marta pulled her own ledger from beneath the counter and flipped to a page with ink stains and dog-eared corners. "This is what I saw," she said. "Not what Silas files, but what he buys. He's been making payments to men who don't work." Clay studied the names. A few were familiar. Too familiar. One, in particular, sat on the page like a stone in a boot. Harlan Fitch. Clay didn't move for a moment. Marta noticed. "You know him." Clay's voice stayed steady. "He manages part of my holdings." Marta's brows lifted. "Then you're not just fighting Silas." Clay folded the paper back into thirds, slow and careful. "I never said I was." He stepped away from the counter. Outside, the street had begun to wake. Men in coats, women with baskets, children with chores. The usual shape of life, until a rumor gave it a new spine. Heads turned as Clay passed. Words followed just behind him, low and sharp. That was the moment he understood something else. The town had already decided what story it wanted. A rich man took in a widow. A rich man got soft. A widow tempted. Children used as shields. Mercy as a costume. Truth didn't fit neat enough to gossip, so they would tear it until it did. Clay walked straight to the sheriff's office. Wade Crowley was inside, coffee in one hand, a tired look in his eyes that didn't belong to him alone. He looked up when Clay entered. "Clay," Wade said cautiously, "you're early." "I'm done waiting," Clay replied. Wade set the coffee down. "If you came to argue procedure—" "I came to demand it," Clay cut in. He laid the papers on the desk. "I want the original Boone ledger. Not Silas's copy, the bank's original. Wade's mouth tightened. That's not simple. It's law, Clay said. Wade leaned back. You push this, you make enemies you can't buy off. Clay's gaze didn't shift. I'm not buying anyone. Wade looked at the papers again. Where'd you get these? From people who still remember what honesty looks like, Clay replied. Wade's jaw worked. Silas will call this a stunt. Clay said, let him. But if you're a sheriff, Wade, then do the part that matters. Wade stared at Clay a long moment, then reached for the cabinet key. He opened a drawer, pulled out a sealed packet, and set it on the desk like it weighed more than ink. This is what the bank sent, Wade said quietly. Official. Clay did not touch it yet. Where's the original? Wade hesitated. Just a heartbeat. Clay saw it. You don't have it. Wade's voice lowered. Silas keeps the originals at the bank office. Clay nodded once. Then we go there. Wade held up a hand. Clay. Clay's tone stayed even. Either you walk beside me or I walk without you. Wade's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the street, toward the place where reputations were made and killed. Then he sighed and took his hat. Fine, he said. But you don't start a shooting. Clay answered, I'm starting a question. They walked together down the street. That alone changed the air. When the sheriff walks beside a man, folks stop pretending it's nothing. The bank office sat square and smug, the kind of building that wore fresh paint like armor. Silas Kellen stood inside as if he'd been waiting for Clay all along. He smiled when he saw them. Well, Silas said, this is a fine sight. Sheriff escorting a rancher to pay his respects. Wade's voice was clipped. I'm here on procedure. Silas's smile widened. Procedure is my favorite word. Clay stepped forward. I'm here for the original Boone ledger. Silas pretended to think. Original? Clay held his gaze. The one with the first ink. The one before your hands touched it. Silas's smile thinned. That's an accusation. It's a request, Clay said. For now. Silas leaned back, hands on the desk. You know how this works? Debt is debt. Clay's voice stayed calm. And forgery is forgery. Silas laughed softly, like a man hearing a child threaten thunder. You want to call me a criminal, Clay? In front of the sheriff? Clay didn't look at Wade. He kept his eyes on Silas. I want the ledger, Clay repeated. Silas's gaze flicked to Wade. Sheriff? Wade swallowed. Produce it, Silas. Silas's eyes sharpened. Or what? Wade's face hardened with effort. Or I write a report and send it to the territory judge. And you don't want that. For a moment, Silas looked like he might refuse just to prove he could. Then he smiled again and turned, walking to a back room. He returned with a ledger bound in dark leather. He set it on the desk with a deliberate thud. There, Silas said. Happy? Clay opened it. He didn't flip pages like a man browsing. He moved straight to the date, straight to the line. And there it was. A smear, a correction, a second ink layered on top of the first, like a lie trying to wear a clean coat. Clay's finger traced it. Who initialed this change? Clay asked. Silas shrugged. Clerical. Clay looked up slowly. Whose hand? Silas's smile didn't move. You don't like the number, rancher? Pay it. Clay shut the ledger and slid it toward Wade. Wade stared at the line, then at Silas. His face went pale in a way that had nothing to do with winter. Silas, Wade began. Silas's tone sharpened. Sheriff, do not forget who keeps your office standing. Wade's hands tightened on the ledger. He didn't close it. He didn't hand it back. That tiny hesitation, small as dust, was the first crack. Clay felt it and pressed. Boone's debt was doubled, Clay said. Without witness, without signature, without legal notice. Silas laughed once, hard. You think you can stand here and turn numbers into sins? Clay's reply came quiet. You already did. Silas's eyes flashed. Get out. Clay didn't move. Wade stepped between them, but his voice lacked weight. Silas, the ledger. Silas pointed toward the door. Now. Clay reached into his coat and pulled out Marta's copies and Nora's ledger page. He placed them beside the bank ledger. 3 versions of the same story. One of them was lying. Pick which one you want the town to see, Clay said. Silas stared at the papers, and for the first time his smile faltered. Not because he feared Clay, but because he feared what paper could do when it stopped obeying him. Fine, Silas said, voice smooth again. Show them. He leaned forward. And when the town hears you're accusing me, they'll ask why. They'll ask about the widow. They'll ask what you're doing with her under your roof. Clay's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. They can ask, Clay said. I won't lie for you. Silas's smile returned, sharper. You think that's brave? It's clean, Clay replied. Silas's gaze slid to Wade. Sheriff? Wade looked torn. Then he said low, This needs review. Silas nodded like a man granting permission. Of course. Review it all you like. But his eyes on Clay promised something else. When Clay and Wade stepped outside, the street had gathered an audience. Not a crowd, not yet, but enough. A woman whispered behind her hand. A man spat near Clay's boot. A boy stared at the sheriff, trying to read which side the badge belonged to. Clay ignored them and walked straight through. Halfway back to Marta's store, a voice rang out. Eliza Boone! Pastor Asa Pike stood near the church steps, his coat buttoned high, his face set with holy certainty. He wasn't speaking to Clay. He was speaking to everyone. Eliza Boone has brought shame into a decent man's home, the pastor said. And now that man would accuse honorable people to cover his own weakness. Clay stopped. Wade stopped too, but Wade's posture said, please don't. Clay turned, slow, and faced the pastor. Pastor Pike lifted his chin. Do you deny it, Clay Rourke? Do you deny the widow's presence under your roof? Clay's voice carried without rising. I deny your right to use God as a weapon, Clay said. A ripple ran through the listeners. The pastor's eyes narrowed. You're threatening the moral order. Clay stepped forward 1 pace. You witnessed a signing, Clay said. A dying man's hand to a number he didn't know. The pastor's mouth tightened. I prayed. You pressured, Clay corrected. A murmur began to grow. Wade cleared his throat. Pastor? Pastor Pike raised a hand, and the sheriff fell quiet like he'd been trained to. Clay watched that and learned something else, too. The pastor wasn't just a preacher. He was a lever. Clay's gaze swept the faces in the street. If you care about morality, he said, then care about truth. If you care about children, he added, then stop using them as currency. Luke Boone's face flashed in his mind. Stubborn, proud, frightened. Daisy's small voice about her father singing in storms. Nora's ledger, neat as prayer. Clay looked back to the pastor. You want to talk about shame? Clay said quietly. Try looking at a child coughing blood and calling it God's will. The street went still. Then a man in a coat stepped out from the shadows near the stable. Harlan Fitch. Clay's eyes found him like a bullet finding its mark. Harlan did not look surprised to be seen. That was what made Clay's stomach drop. Harlan's gaze slid away first. That was the moment Clay knew the circle was tighter than he'd feared. Wade noticed Clay's stare. You know him? Clay didn't answer. Not yet. Because answers have weight. And Clay was choosing where to drop them. He turned away from the pastor and walked toward Harlan Fitch. Harlan backed a half step, then stopped as if remembering who he was supposed to be. Clay spoke low enough only Harlan could hear. You've been making payments to Silas, Clay said. Harlan's eyes widened just a fraction. That's nonsense. Clay's voice stayed calm. Then prove it. Come to my ranch. Bring your books. Harlan's throat moved. I don't answer to you in public. Clay leaned closer. You will. Harlan's jaw clenched. Or what? Clay didn't threaten. He didn't need to. He simply said, or I stop protecting the people you think you're protecting. Harlan's face lost color. He nodded once, stiff, and turned away. Clay watched him go, then looked at Wade. You saw that, Clay said. Wade's voice was strained. Clay. Clay's eyes were hard. You've been chasing the wrong man, or pretending you were. Wade swallowed. It's not that simple. It is, Clay said. It's just not easy. They returned to the ranch by afternoon. Eliza met Clay at the door, May sleeping in her arms again. Breath steady but fragile. Eliza's eyes searched Clay's face for news before she asked for it. Clay didn't soften his voice, but he softened his truth. The ledger was altered, he said. I proved it to the sheriff. Eliza's shoulders loosened a fraction. Then it's over? Clay shook his head. No. Eliza's jaw tightened. What now? Clay looked out the window. Far down the drive, riders were gathering, not many, but enough to be a message. Silas didn't need a crowd yet. He needed fear. Clay looked back at Eliza. Now, Clay said, we find out who signed the lie. Eliza held May closer. And if it's someone close to you? Clay didn't look away. Then I cut it out, he said. A stone struck the porch post. Ben flinched. Daisy covered her ears. Luke moved like he wanted to run outside and fight the world barehanded. Clay's voice snapped, sharp and final. Stay inside. He stepped onto the porch. A man's voice called from the dark edge of the yard, calm as poison. You think paper will save you, Rourke? Clay answered into the quiet. I think truth will bury you. A rifle shot cracked the air, higher than last time, closer than comfort. Clay did not duck. He stood there, still as a fence post, until the riders drifted back like wolves deciding to wait. When the yard fell quiet again, Clay went inside and set the bank ledger on the table. Nora came close, eyes on the book, as if it were a snake. "That's it," she whispered. Clay nodded. Eliza touched the edge of the cover with 2 fingers, then pulled her hand back as if it burned. "What if they take it from you?" she asked. Clay's voice dropped. "They will try." Eliza's eyes held his. "And if they can?" Clay took the folded debt note from his coat, the one with the red wax seal, and placed it beside the ledger. Then he did something he hadn't done since he was a boy. He prayed. Not out loud, not pretty. Just a silent, stubborn plea that sounded like a promise. He looked up. "Then," Clay said, "I'll stand without paper." The ranch woke to hoofbeats that did not belong. Clay Rourke heard them before the dogs did. He stood at the window with the ledger open on the table behind him and watched a single rider approach, slow and careful, like a man walking toward a sentence he already knew. Harlan Fitch dismounted at the gate. He took his hat off before Clay asked. That was the first admission. "You asked me to bring my books," Harlan said. Clay opened the door, but did not step aside. "Set them there." Harlan placed a slim bundle on the porch rail. He did not meet Clay's eyes. Inside, Eliza gathered the children without fuss. Nora closed the door to the back room. Luke hovered, restless. Daisy held Ben's hand. May slept, breath thin but steady. Clay carried the books to the table and opened them. Harlan stood across from him, hands folded like a man in church. Clay did not rush. He turned pages with the patience of someone who had learned how lies hide, never in the middle, always near the edges. "Who paid you?" Clay asked without looking up. Harlan swallowed. "I don't know what you mean." Clay found the page. He set his finger on the line. "You took money from Silas Kellen," Clay said. "Regularly. For services not rendered." Harlan's shoulders slumped just enough to show truth pushing through. "It was to protect the ranch," Harlan said quickly. "Your father's debts. My father's dead," Clay replied. "Say my name." Harlan licked his lips. "Clay, Silas said the books needed smoothing. He said the Boones wouldn't survive winter anyway." Clay looked up then. "And you believed him?" Harlan shook his head. "I believed the ranch would." Clay closed the book. The sound landed heavy. "Did you alter the Boone ledger?" Clay asked. Harlan's eyes darted toward the back room, then returned to Clay. "I didn't touch the first number," Harlan said. "I just corrected the margin." Clay's voice was low. "You doubled it." Harlan's mouth opened, closed. Silas pressed the seal. Clay nodded. "I know." Eliza stepped forward. "My husband died the morning after that seal was pressed." Harlan flinched. "I didn't kill him." "No," Eliza said. "You just made sure he couldn't live." Silence filled the space where excuses had been. Clay pushed the books back across the table. "You're done here," he said. Harlan looked up, startled. "You can't." "You're done," Clay repeated. "Pack what's yours. Leave before sunset." Harlan's face drained. "If I go, Silas..." Clay's eyes hardened. If you stay, it'll be worse. Harlan stood there, shaking. You'll ruin me. Clay answered evenly. You ruined yourself. Harlan nodded once, the way men do when they finally understand the cost. He took his hat and walked out without another word. Outside, a rifle cracked. Too close. Clay moved before thought. He pulled Eliza back, shut the door, and bolted it. Down, he said. Another shot tore a splinter from the porch post. Luke sprang toward the window. Clay caught him by the shoulder. Stay! The word landed like a hand on the chest. Clay crossed to the table, scooped up the ledger and the folded paper, and slid them into his coat. He stepped to the door. Eliza grabbed his arm. Don't! Clay met her eyes. If they think I'll hide, they'll keep hunting. He opened the door and stepped into the yard. Silas Kellen stood by the fence with 2 riders flanking him. He held his hands out, palms easy. Clay, Silas called. We need to talk. Clay walked halfway and stopped. You sent men to shoot at my house, Clay said. Silas smiled. Warnings keep order. Clay's voice stayed level. You altered a ledger. You bribed my manager. You used a pastor to bless it. Silas shrugged. You're saying words. Words need proof. Clay pulled the ledger from his coat and held it up. Silas's smile flickered. Just a hair. That book disappears, Silas said softly, and this all ends. Clay shook his head. It doesn't. Silas's eyes narrowed. You're choosing her over everything. Clay answered without hesitation. I'm choosing truth. Silas laughed, sharp. Truth doesn't keep a ranch standing. Clay stepped closer. Neither does rot. Silas leaned forward. You think the town will side with you? With a widow and 5 mouths? They already believe the story I told. Clay looked past Silas at the riders gathering on the ridge. Then I'll give them a better one, he said. Silas's voice dropped. You bring that ledger to town hall tomorrow, and I'll make sure you lose more than land. Clay's reply was quiet. Try. Silas's smile returned, thin and mean. He tipped his hat and rode off, the others following like shadows. Inside, the children waited. Nora spoke first. Is he gone? For now, Clay said. Luke's hands shook. They shot at us. They missed, Clay replied. Eliza stood in the doorway, face pale but steady. This is my fault. Clay turned to her. No. They wouldn't be here if not for me. They were already here, Clay said. You just made them visible. Eliza studied him. You sent Harlan away. Yes. He was family. Clay nodded. So are they. He glanced toward the back room. That night, Clay slept in a chair by the door with the ledger under his coat. He dreamed of seals pressed into wax, of names written heavier than ink, of a child breathing in the dark while men argued over margins. At dawn he rose, stiff and certain. He saddled his horse and turned to Eliza. Today, he said, we take this to town hall. Eliza held his gaze. They'll try to stop you. Clay nodded. They'll try. Nora stepped forward, ledger in her hands, her ledger. I want to come, she said. Clay hesitated. Then he nodded. You walk beside me. Luke swallowed. Me too. No, Eliza said. You stay with me. Luke looked to Clay. Clay shook his head gently. She's right. Daisy hugged Ben. Be brave, she whispered. Clay mounted, the bank ledger heavy in his coat, the folded paper heavier still. As he rode out, the ranch lights dimmed behind him. Ahead, the town waited, quiet, watching, ready to decide which story it would believe. Clay did not hurry. Men who hurry look guilty. Men who walk in carrying truth make others move. Town hall filled before the bell finished ringing. Men leaned against walls. Women stood with arms crossed. A few children were sent away, then crept back to doorways when no one noticed. The air carried that old Western weight, when decisions were made out loud so they could never be taken back. Clay Rourke walked in alone. He did not take the center. He stopped just short of it, the way men do when they know the room will come to them. The sheriff sat behind the table, badge catching light like it wanted to be seen. Silas Kellen leaned nearby, relaxed, already certain of the ending. Pastor Asa Pike stood with his Bible open, a finger marking a place that needed no mark. Murmurs rippled when Clay laid the ledger on the table. Silas smiled. I assume this is about the Boone debt. Clay nodded. It's about more than that. Pastor Pike cleared his throat. Order. The room quieted, not because of respect, but habit. Clay spoke without raising his voice. The Boone debt was altered, he said. Doubled without witness, without notice. The original ledger shows it. Silas laughed lightly. Anyone can smudge ink. Clay slid Marta's copies forward. Anyone can copy lies. These don't match yours. A man in the back spoke. You saying the bank cheats? Clay answered. I'm saying one man did. Silas's smile thinned. Careful. Clay met his eyes. I am. Pastor Pike stepped forward. You're accusing a pillar of this town. Clay turned to him. You witnessed a signing. You prayed over it. The pastor lifted his chin. I offered comfort. Clay said quietly, You offered pressure. A murmur grew. Not agreement. Uncertainty. Worse for men like Silas. The sheriff shifted. Clay, if you have proof. Clay opened the ledger to the page. This line was changed. This initial isn't Boone's. This seal was pressed after the ink dried. Silas scoffed. Technicalities. Clay nodded. That's what thieves call them. The room went still. Pastor Pike slammed his Bible shut. This is indecent. A widow living under a rich man's roof. Now this spectacle? Clay turned to face the crowd. Eliza Boone didn't ask for shelter, Clay said. I offered it. If that offends you, say it to me. A woman whispered. A man spat. Silas seized the moment. He's soft, Silas said. He's compromised. He wants to erase a lawful debt. Clay shook his head. I want to erase a lie. The sheriff rubbed his temples. We need order. Clay looked at Wade. Then do your job. Wade swallowed. Produce witnesses. Clay nodded. I will. He turned toward the door. Harlan Fitch, Clay said. A shape detached from the wall. Harlan's face was gray. He did not look at Silas. Clay spoke evenly. You took money from Silas Kellen to smooth accounts. Did you alter the Boone ledger? Harlan's mouth opened, closed. He glanced at the pastor, then at the sheriff. His voice broke. Yes. The room exploded. Silas stepped forward. Liar. Harlan flinched. You told me it was to protect the ranch. You said the Boones wouldn't last winter. Eliza Boone's name cracked through the hall like a dropped plate. Pastor Pike raised his hands. Enough! Clay's voice cut through. Did you press the seal? Harlan shook his head. No, Silas did. All eyes swung to Silas. Silas's smile vanished. This is perjury. Clay turned to the sheriff. You heard him. Wade looked down at the ledger, at the copies, at Harlan. His voice came out hoarse. I did. Pastor Pike pointed at Clay. You're tearing this town apart. Clay answered softly. It was already torn. Silas leaned close to Wade. You let this stand, you lose your office. Wade straightened. For the first time in days, his badge looked heavy. I'm suspending the Boone foreclosure, Wade said. Pending review. A shout went up. Anger and relief tangled together. Silas's face went hard. You can't. Wade met his gaze. Watch me. Silas turned on Clay, eyes bright with promise. This isn't over. Clay nodded. No. Outside, the bell rang again, too late to stop what had started. Clay stepped out into the street. The crowd parted, unsure whether to spit or follow. Halfway down the steps, Pastor Pike called after him. You think truth saves, the pastor said. It only replaces one order with another. Clay turned. I'm not here to rule, he said. I'm here to end a lie. As Clay walked away, a stone struck the boardwalk near his boot. He did not stop. Behind him, the town argued with itself. Ahead of him, the ranch waited, along with men who would not accept a ledger's verdict. Clay felt the weight of the folded paper in his coat and knew the next choice would not be made in daylight. The riders came after dark. Not all at once. Not shouting. Just enough hoofbeats to make counting useless and sleep impossible. Clay Rourke was already awake. He stood at the ranch door with the lamp turned low, the ledger tucked under his coat, the folded paper heavy as a verdict. Inside, Eliza kept the children back from the windows the way she'd learned to do by standing there herself. A knock came. Firm. Official. Sheriff? A voice called. Clay opened the door and did not step aside. Wade Crowley stood on the porch with two deputies behind him. Their hats were low. Their hands were not resting where they should have been. Silas Kellen waited near the fence, mounted, his smile carried by the dark. Night's an odd time for paperwork, Clay said. Wade cleared his throat. I've got orders. Clay looked at the paper in Wade's hand. From whom? Wade didn't answer. Silas leaned forward in his saddle. From the bank, he said. From the town. From common sense. Clay met his gaze. You lost today. Silas smiled. Daylight votes. Night enforces. Wade shifted. Clay, this is a temporary seizure. Just the outbuildings. Until review, until fear sets, Clay finished. Eliza stepped into the doorway, May in her arms, the child's breathing shallow but steady. You said it was suspended, Eliza said. Wade's eyes flicked to the child, then away. I said pending. Clay stepped forward. You want to take something, Wade? Take it from me. Silas laughed softly. That's generous. Clay's voice was even. You don't touch her. You don't touch the children. A deputy moved, just a half step. Clay's hand lifted, palm out. Stay, he said. Not loud, not threatening, final. The deputy stopped. Silas's smile vanished. Sheriff? Wade swallowed. Post the notice, he told the deputy. On the barn. The hammer rang out. Once, twice. Each strike sounded like a door closing somewhere else. From inside, Luke surged toward the threshold. Clay turned without looking. Stay! Luke stopped, shaking. A shot cracked from the ridge. High, meant to scare. The horses stamped. Silas did not look toward the sound. Accidents happen, he said. Clay took one step closer. Call them off. Silas's eyes were flat. You don't command me. Clay turned to Wade. This ends now. Wade's jaw worked. I can't. Clay nodded. Then you won't. He stepped onto the porch, blocking the doorway with his body. Another shot, closer. Eliza's voice came from behind him, steady as iron. Clay. He did not turn. I know. The deputies looked to Wade. Wade looked to Silas. The chain of command stretched thin and ugly. Clay reached into his coat and pulled out the folded paper with the red seal. He held it up where all could see. This is what you want, he said. This lie. Silas leaned forward. Yes. Clay tore it clean down the fold. The sound was small. The effect was not. Silas shouted. You idiot! Clay dropped the pieces to the boards. There's your debt. Wade stared. Clay. Clay met his eyes. Arrest me if you want, but you don't pass this door. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the wind shifted. The horses quieted. Silas's voice cut sharp. Do it. The deputy nearest Clay raised his rifle. Wade stepped between them. No. Silas's face twisted. You're finished. Wade's voice shook but held. This isn't law. It's intimidation. Silas stared at him. You choose wrong sides. Wade looked at the house, at the woman holding the child, at the children watching from the dark. I choose right doors, Wade said. Silas spat into the dirt. You'll regret this. Maybe, Wade replied. Not tonight. Silas wheeled his horse. The riders on the ridge drifted back, slow and sour, like men denied a feast. The yard emptied in pieces. When the last hoofbeat faded, Clay sagged, just a fraction. Eliza was there, her hand steady on his arm. They'll come again. Clay nodded. Not like that. Wade lingered on the porch. You made it impossible, he said. Clay answered, I made it honest. Wade looked at the torn paper on the boards. The bank will come hard. Clay met his eyes. So will the truth. Wade tipped his hat to Eliza, to the children. Then he left. Inside, the house breathed again. Eliza set May down and turned to Clay. You burned the bridge. Clay shook his head. I burned the rope. Nora stepped forward, her ledger clutched to her chest. What now? Clay looked at the children, 5 small lives balanced on the edge of adult decisions. Now, he said, we finish it. Outside, the barn door bore the notice like a scar. Clay took it down and folded it once. Careful, deliberate. He placed it on the table beside Nora's ledger. 2 records. One would stand. He looked up as dawn thinned the dark. Tomorrow, Clay said, we take this to the territory. Eliza met his gaze. And if they come before morning, Clay answered, quiet and certain, then I keep the door. Morning did not come clean. It arrived heavy, like it knew what it was carrying. Clay Rourke stood at the table where the torn notice lay beside Nora's ledger. The red wax seal, broken, had left a faint stain on the wood, a mark that did not wash away. Outside, the ranch held its breath. Inside, Eliza kept the children close, not hiding them, just keeping them from being alone with questions that had teeth. A knock came. Careful this time. Clay opened the door. Eliza stood there, a folded sheet in her hand. Not the bank paper, not the ledger. Something older, softer at the edges. I should have shown you this sooner, she said. Clay stepped aside. They sat at the table. Eliza unfolded the paper once, then again, smoothing it with a hand that had learned how to flatten fear. It was in my husband's coat, she said, stitched into the lining. He said it was insurance. Clay leaned forward. The paper was a receipt, a promissory acknowledgement, original, dated before the altered ledger. It showed the first amount, the honest amount, and beneath it, a name that made Clay's breath hitch. Rourke Holdings. Eliza watched his face change. You didn't know, she said, not accusing. Stating. Clay nodded once. I didn't. The room felt smaller. My husband borrowed seed from your ranch when the bank refused him, Eliza continued. He paid most of it back. This was the balance. He went to settle it himself. Clay closed his eyes. He saw it then. The gap, the opening Silas had used. The debt passed through his holdings before it was dressed up and doubled elsewhere. It's my mark, Clay said quietly. Not my hand, but my mark. Eliza met his gaze. If this goes to the territory, they'll ask why your name is there. Clay nodded. They should. From the back room, a floorboard creaked. Nora stood in the doorway, ledger hugged to her chest. Does this fix it? She asked. Clay looked at her, at the question behind the question. It fixes the truth, he said. It breaks the lie. Nora nodded once, accepting the cost before knowing it. A rider came hard up the drive. Wade Crowley dismounted with a look that belonged to men who had already decided to be smaller than they wanted. Silas is gone, Wade said. Headed south. Clay didn't relax. He'll be back. Wade hesitated. He's filed charges, accusations. Eliza's jaw tightened. Against me? Wade shook his head. Against you, Clay. Clay nodded. Good. Wade looked at the paper on the table. What's that? Eliza answered, the truth. Wade took it, read, and swore under his breath. This puts you in it. Clay said, I'm already in it. Wade glanced toward the house. The town won't like this. Clay met his eyes. The town already chose a story. It's time they hear the right one. They rode to the county office before noon. Not together. Clay went alone. He walked in, carrying 3 things: the original receipt, the altered ledger, and the torn notice. He set them on the clerk's desk without ceremony. "I'm filing a complaint," Clay said, "against Silas Kellen and against myself." The clerk blinked. "Against yourself?" Clay nodded. "My holdings touched this debt. I didn't know it was used to trap a man, but it was used. I accept review." The clerk swallowed. "That could cost you." "It already has," Clay replied. Word traveled faster than horses. By afternoon, the town had gathered again, smaller this time, tighter. Pastor Pike stood to one side, face drawn. Silas did not appear. That absence spoke louder than sermons. Clay stood where he had stood before, but the room felt different. Not quieter, sharper. He held up the paper Eliza had given him. "This is the first debt," Clay said. "The honest one." Murmurs moved like wind through wheat. "And this," he continued, lifting the altered ledger, "is what it became." He placed them down and stepped back. "My name appears on the first," Clay said. "Not because I meant harm, but because I didn't look close enough. I profited from distance." A man shouted, "You're saying it's your fault?" Clay answered, "I'm saying it's my responsibility." That did it. The room split, not into sides, but into questions. Pastor Pike stepped forward. "You think confession absolves you?" Clay met his gaze. "I think it binds me." Wade spoke then, voice rough but clear. "The foreclosure is void, pending territory review." A woman cried out, relief or anger, hard to tell. Clay turned to the clerk. "Record it all." The clerk dipped his pen. By dusk, it was done. Clay rode back to the ranch under a sky that did not promise mercy. Eliza met him at the door. "You gave them your neck," she said. Clay nodded. "So they couldn't keep yours." She searched his face. "What happens to you now?" Clay looked past her to the children. "Now," he said, "I wait, and I pay." That night, the ranch was quiet. Too quiet. A knock came near midnight. Single. Careful. Clay opened the door to find Silas Kellen standing alone, hat in hand, eyes bright with a fury that had learned to smile. "You think you won," Silas said. Clay answered, "I think I stopped you." Silas laughed softly. "You handed the territory a rope. They'll hang you with it." Clay stepped aside. "You're not welcome here." Silas leaned in. "You confessed. You broke your own spine." Clay met his gaze. "I straightened it." Silas's smile went mean. "This isn't finished." Clay replied, "It never is, but it ends for you." Silas tipped his hat and walked into the dark. Inside, Eliza waited. "He came?" she asked. "Yes." "Did he threaten you?" Clay shook his head. "He promised." Eliza took Clay's hand then, not pleading, not grateful, steady. "We'll stand," she said. Clay looked at Tom, the table where Nora's ledger lay open. where the torn notice rested like a relic of something burned. "Yes," he said, "we will." From the back room, May breathed evenly. Clay closed his eyes and listened. Tomorrow would decide his land. Tonight had decided his name. Spring came quietly, not with banners or trumpets, just with mud where snow had been, and mornings that did not cut quite as deep. The ranch breathed again, cautious but alive. Clay Rourke waited. He did not ride out to meet rumors. He did not argue with men who wanted the old story back. He worked the land that was still his, fed the horses, fixed a hinge that had never sat right, and kept the door open the way a man does when he has decided where he stands. The territory ruling arrived on a Wednesday. A single rider brought it, folded neat, no seal broken in anger. Clay took the paper and read it once, then again. The foreclosure was void. The altered ledger was evidence. Silas Kellen was barred from handling accounts pending trial. Clay exhaled, slow, measured. It wasn't victory. It was a clearing. Eliza read the ruling in the doorway, May on her hip, Nora close enough to see every word. "So it's over," Nora said. Clay shook his head. "It's finished." There was a difference. He let the girl hear it. By afternoon, Wade Crowley came by without ceremony. "I did the right thing late," Wade said. "That won't make me clean." Clay nodded. "It makes you hear." Wade left his hat on the table for a moment, then took it back. "I'll try to keep it straight." "That's all anyone can do," Clay replied. 2 days later, Silas Kellen was seen once more, far down the road, riding hard, not stopping to be recognized. He did not look back. Clay watched him go from the porch and felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that some men carried their own endings with them. On Sunday, Pastor Asa Pike preached to a thinner crowd. His words were careful now, weighed like coins that had lost their shine. He did not speak Eliza's name again. Life did what it always did next. It arranged itself. Eliza did not ask to stay. Clay did not ask her to leave. They moved around each other with the respect of people who knew the cost of assuming. Eliza cooked when she wished. Clay cooked when he had to. The children learned the barn by touch and the house by sound. Luke took to work like a challenge. Daisy sang again. Ben followed Clay at a distance that slowly shortened. Nora kept her ledger, but the numbers inside it changed. One evening, Clay came in with a new paper. He set it on the table where old papers had once ruled the room. "This isn't charity," he said, before Eliza could speak. "And it isn't debt." Eliza read it carefully. A deed. Shared use. Protections written plain. A term that ended only if she wished it to. No tricks. No seal pressed too hard. Eliza looked up. "Why?" Clay met her gaze. "Because the truth deserves something that lasts." She folded the paper and did not hand it back. "I won't be owned," she said. Clay nodded. "I won't own." They understood each other then, not as rescue and rescued, but as two people choosing the same ground. That night, Clay took the old receipt, the first honest one, and the torn notice and set them in the fire. The wax flared red once, bright as a warning, then softened into nothing. Nora watched from the doorway. "What do we keep?" she asked. Clay pointed to her ledger. That. Spring leaned into summer. The children grew. The land healed in places where it had been cut. The ranch learned new habits, laughter where there had been counting, quiet where there had been fear. One afternoon, Clay found Eliza at the fence, watching the children argue over a chore. "You could have left," she said, not turning. Clay answered, "So could you." She smiled then, small, real. A knock came one evening, gentle. Doc Miriam Kent stood there, hat off. "Just checking." May toddled past, steady on her feet. Doc smiled. "That's good work." "It was many hands," Eliza said. Doc nodded to Clay. "That's how it lasts." When the house settled for the night, Clay sat at the table and wrote one last thing. Not a confession, not a contract, a simple record of names. He folded it into thirds and pressed a seal, not red this time, but plain. No authority, just a mark to remember where a promise began. He set it in the drawer with Nora's ledger. Eliza came up behind him. "You don't owe us," she said. Clay closed the drawer. "I know." She rested her hand on the wood anyway. Outside, the wind moved through the grass without asking permission. Inside, 5 children slept under a roof that did not argue. Clay Rourke stood there a moment longer, listening. The debt he had come to collect was gone. The one he had chosen to keep. That one felt like home. When the dust finally settled, nothing about the valley looked grander than before. The fence still leaned, the road still cut hard after rain, and the nights still asked honest questions of anyone who stayed awake long enough to hear them. But inside that house, a different kind of order had taken root. A table where no bowl sat empty. A door that stayed open because it could, not because it had to. 5 children who learned that safety is not loud, and love does not need to be proven every morning. Clay Rourke did not call it redemption. Folks his age knew better than to trust big words. He called it staying. He called it fixing what was in reach. And when the widow set bread on the table without counting slices, he understood that some debts are meant to be carried, quietly, willingly, for the rest of a man's days. If this story stirred a memory, or reminded you of a place you once knew, we'd be honored to hear it. These stories live longer when they're shared. If you enjoyed this Western love tale, please like the video. Subscribe to stay with us for more stories of faith, family, and the Old West. And tell us in the comments, what city or town are you watching from today? Thank you for spending this time with us. Your presence matters here.